From Southern California to the Colorado Rockies, I'm telling you, VehicleVoice gets around. This week, contributor David Barrett takes a drive in a Volvo S80 from the relative flat of Denver to the Rocky Mountain National Park.
Well, here we are in Golden, Colorado. And when you're in a place like this, mountains, cool, in fact cold air, and snow all about, you tend to think of four-wheel drive vehicles. But you know, a lot of people like cars, so we thought we'd go on a drive through the Rocky Mountains in a Volvo. The people at Volvo know cold weather better than just about anyone, so we thought that it might be fun to explore and see how well a car holds up on the mountainous roads, not only of Golden, but of the entire Rocky Mountain area around it. So let's go for a ride. Take a cruise up to some higher elevations and see how this Volvo performs. So far, the Volvo has been very comfortable to drive. Because of its design, it does tend to understeer a little bit, but the steering is linear and feels very comfortable. The seats are also very supportive, and you don't tend to get tired after being in the car for a while, which is very nice if you're traveling. I think that the Volvo could improve itself in a couple of areas. The shifter mechanism, for example. It's much too easy to shift into neutral instead of reverse, and when you want to shift into drive, you end up in 4 or 3. But the performance otherwise is exemplary. It's absolutely lovely. The car accelerates beautifully, it's quiet, and when you need to put the brakes on, it stops on a dime. The controls in the car are also very nice. You even have a heating system to keep the seat nice and warm for both front passenger and driver. The defroster is up above, and in the center console area here, you've got the ability to control the flow of air to the head, to the body, all 3 areas, feet, torso, head, whatever you like, and there are separate controls left and right to allow the right hand or left hand passenger or driver their own temperature setting. Also kind of interesting is this neat little cubby right up here. You can reach inside, and as you can see, you could store an iPod in there, or another kind of MP3 player, a wallet, anything that might be of value to you, and you can close it up so no one can see that it's in there. The radio sounds average, I would say. There's no reception up here in the mountains, but I can tell you overall it's easy to use, nice big volume control, and it's generally a pleasure to operate while you're driving. And up above, you do have nice vent controls, allowing to open or close the amount of air that flows left or right, and to control up and down and left and right how the vents work. Nicely integrated. And by the way, notice the plastic along here. It almost looks like leather. Very high quality plastic indeed. Well, we've just left Golden and we're on Highway 58. And this part of Colorado is known as railroad country. Not only are there roads for automobiles everywhere, but this is the area where more transcontinental railroads pass through the Rockies than any other place. Just down the road is the Colorado Railroad Museum. Let's stop in for a moment and find out what used to run through these mountains before there were automobiles. Colorado is known for not only great roads, but railroads. So we thought it'd be fun to take a quick peek at the Colorado Railroad Museum, where they've got old steam locomotives all the way up to a modern set of Rio Grande diesels donated by the Southern Pacific Railway before it was absorbed by the Union Pacific. Let's go take a look. These locomotives are actually quite famous. They're from the old Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad, and were donated to the museum by the Southern Pacific Railroad in 1996. Completely restored by 1999. These engines were used for freight service and were also used for the Denver ski train. Now, these locomotives run on standard gauge track. That's what you'll see at almost any railroad in modern society. That's 56.5 inches between the railheads. Now, the most common rail found in Colorado for many, many years was narrow gauge. This is 36 inches across the railhead. The rail was not only narrower in gauge, but it was also much lighter in weight, so that meant there was a lot more maintenance. But because it was narrower, it could get into narrower areas and it could go up steeper grades. These railroads were watched and loved by everyone. It was a hard way to earn a living, and many people lost their lives working on the railroad, but everyone loved their jobs. And trains, like this one, while they still hold a lot of beauty and reminiscence for people today, they were the lore, they were the thing people were excited about before there were automobiles. Railroad employees, primarily brakemen and railroad hands, they would travel in a caboose, which was at the end of a train. Today, we don't have cabooses any longer, for safety reasons primarily. And in these days, boy, it was really dangerous. This is a Colorado and Southern caboose. It was built in 1887 and rebuilt in 1935. It's made completely of wood, which means it's quite flammable, and it also means that if something hits it, well, it turns into 8,973 toothpicks. Let's take a quick look inside. Now, at the back end of a caboose is an area called the cupola. Railroadmen would sit up here, and they would use it as an observation post to look for trains behind them before there was centralized traffic control. Not very comfortable, but certainly good visibility when you're looking out behind the train. Kind of fun, but I think it's time to get back on the road. So how has this Volvo done so far? Well, on the highway, it's calm and comfortable and very nice to drive. As soon as you get into the white stuff here, well, even though it's a front drive car, it's not the same thing as all-wheel drive. Nor is it like an SUV. You have to be a little bit more careful, and you have to also use lower gears. But it does make its way along. This type of snow, which has been down for just a couple of days here, no problem at all. We were able to get through it in up to about maybe 6 or 7 inches of depth without any problem. You could stop, you could start, but I wouldn't want to sit here overnight while it's snowing, I can tell you that. One of the things that Volvo has not been highly regarded for in the past is styling. But now things have changed. This S80 is actually quite attractive. If you take a look at the way that the lines of the car flow, the edge cuts work, even the way that the headlights are sculpted into the front of the car around the grille area. This car actually has additional windshield wipers, but they're not for the windshield, they're actually for the headlights, nicely integrated into the design of the car. The combination of the wheel set, the overall sculpting of it, the way that the rear view mirrors are integrated, and the way that the trunk line works makes this a very attractive and elegant looking car, and at a moderate price. I like the way this Volvo looks, and I can tell you a couple years ago I would have never thought about stepping into a Volvo. So there have been big advances, and it's all for the better. All automobile manufacturers like to have trademark or signature elements to the design of their cars. In the front of the car, the Volvo's grille is definitely a signature for the brand, but the way that the trunk line is done is also a signature for the Volvo brand. The way that the lights are integrated, the way that this line curves across the trunk line, and that Volvo is placed on here. When you are behind this car, even if this logo wasn't on the trunk, you would know you were behind a Volvo. And speaking of trunks, there's plenty of room in here for a family of 5 to go on a 1-week vacation. 3 full golf club bags, a whole series of tennis bags, a whole series of grocery bags. This is a bag trunk. Well, it's the end of the day, and we're heading down from 14,000 feet to a lower altitude where our home base is. So how is the Volvo done? Well, it's an enjoyable car to drive. It does suffer a little bit if you try and push it hard. It does not like the idea of being thrown into the corners. It does tend to plow, push, or if you like, understeer. But the steering is comfortable. The wheel feels good in my hands. The brakes feel good. All in all, it's just a joy to drive around. So if you're going cross country, if you want it as a family car, as a business car, you'd be hard-pressed not to be really enthusiastic about this car for a long time. I think it's a car that stays fresh year after year. I don't think I'd get bored with this car after a day or two. But at the same time, it's not the kind of car that I would personally drive. I like something that's a little rougher, a little bit more aggressive perhaps. But if I had to drive when I was tired, if I wanted to drive at night, or if I had a family that I was carting around with me, couldn't go wrong. It's a really nice car. The Volvo S80.
For more on the Volvo S80, go to Volvo's US website. And join us in future video podcasts for more from our test drive series. We'll keep you guessing about vehicle in place, but here's a little hint. The next spot is a lot more tropical. That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Let's Talk Cars. I'm Cameron Barrett. Thanks for tuning in.